I want to discuss the Dr. Jeffrey MacDonald family murder case. Okay, the murders took place in 1970. Um, Dr. Jeffrey MacDonald was found, he called the authorities and said there was a stabbing at 544 Castle Drive. Okay, and when the authorities came, when the cops came and the ambulance came, they found his wife, Colette MacDonald, with both arms broken and multiple stab wounds up to the hilt. They found Kimberly MacDonald, 5 years old, um, with her skull crushed and multiple stab wounds. They found baby Kristen with stab wounds both in the front and the back with a knife and an ice pick. They were all dead. And they'd been kind of overkilled. But the strongest adult was left with only a few kind of scratches, one serious wound with semi-collapsed lung, and some bruises on his forehead. Now, obviously, that's very suspicious. Okay. However, what he said happened was that a group of people intruded into his home, and there were four people that he saw, and one of them being a woman with a floppy hat and long, stringy blonde hair. She was chanting, "As it is groovy, kill the pigs. Acid and rain. As it is groovy, hit him again." And the three men, and he engaged in a fierce fight. Okay, now the details of this thing I don't want to really get into. Okay, I want to get into the bone of it, the why of it. Okay, the book Fatal Vision is the best well known, Joe McGinnis's book. It's a true crime classic, but it doesn't deal very successfully with why Dr. MacDonald would slaughter his family in such a bizarre and brutal way. Now, McGinniss actually proposes that maybe he was abusing an amphetamine, but the evidence for that is very weak, and even Joe McGinniss is unsure about it. Now, there's a lot of people who want to say, well, Dr. MacDonald is a psychopath. He's a sociopath. He's not. Okay? He was an emergency room physician with an impeccable reputation. If he'd been a psychopath or sociopath, he was in the best position to harm people, and he healed them. In addition, during the 9 years that he was free, between the murders and the time he was brought to trial, he not only had an impeccable reputation as an emergency room physician, but he took a special interest in the detection and treatment of abused children. Now, what was he trying to do? Was he trying to make restitution? Okay. An author and reviewer, Josephine Hendon, wrote a review of Fatal Vision for the New Republic. And in that review, she gets closer to the bone of the why than anybody I've ever read, including Joe McGinniss. The why is seen precisely in how he talks about Colette and how he praises her. As Hinton says, Jeff MacDonald's view of relations between the sexes is the type to be found in old football movies. His woman must be bright and beautiful, somebody who is basically an adoring angel and endlessly praises and supports him. Okay. In fact, Colette had written a series of love letters to him in which she talked about all the beautiful moments he had created. Okay. So he called her the epitome of womanhood. The epitome of womanhood. Now, what probably happened that night was that the two of them quarreled. It started with a quarrel because one of the kids had wet the bed. And it might have escalated when she said something about his infidelities. He did have at least 15 girlfriends during the 5-year marriage. Or she said something, I think, that was very crude. Basically, she stepped outside the role that he had carved out for her as the epitome of womanhood. She might have used some cuss words that was, uncharacteristic. And as Josephine Hinden said, by reducing her to being nothing, he restored her to being all. It was similar to another case, the Jean Harris case, who killed her longtime lover and said that they fought over the gun and he tried to save her life. Basically, she gave him a hero's death. And in both cases, they had to destroy the victims in order to save them as an ideal. Somebody once said, what is the problem with being up on a pedestal? You find that out when you take one step. And I do think that that was the guts of the reason that this horror happened. In order to preserve his family as the ideal